Hello everybody and welcome to Vegan Business Talk. I'm your host, Katrina Fox. My guest today is Mitchell Scott, the co-founder of The Very Good Butchers. Yes, I'm interviewing a butcher on Vegan Business Talk, but don't worry, it's a vegan butcher. So Mitchell is the co-founder, as I mentioned, The Very Good Butchers, which is a Canadian plant-based meat company. After selling out on the farmers markets on Denman Island in British Columbia, Mitchell and his co-founder and fellow bean butcher, James Davison, knew they were onto something. They brought their beans to Victoria and opened the Canadian West Coast's first plant-based butchery. The pair are also opening a new facility that will be able to produce up to $100 million more in product a year, which is an increase of more than 2,500%. Wow. Welcome to the show, Mitchell.
Katrina, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
I am so impressed by your rapid growth. I think the business has only been around about 3 years or so. So we're going to dive deep into that today. But first of all, the name Butcher. Why did you use the word butcher and use the terms butchery?
Yeah. So when James was originally starting the company, he was looking for a way to communicate that he's making, high quality meat alternatives, similar to what you'd find in a butcher shop. And his idea was, we're the Very Good Butcher and we can create this, delicious plant-based meat. And it's so good. We're so very good that we can do this without having to kill any animals. That was the kind of gist of it. And we've taken that and just kind of played on it. It seems to resonate really well with people. The media love it. So we've run with it. And I think it does a great job of showing what we're about in creating these high quality meat alternatives with, very good ingredients.
Yeah, and it certainly gets people talking because they're like, hang on, butchery, what are we talking about? I thought it was it was vegan. So it's nice to kind of start associating those terms and getting people to think, like you say, about meat differently. So wonderful. I love that. So as we mentioned, you've experienced very fast growth in just a few years, including going public last year, which is amazing. So just take us back to the early days. You you had this idea, you got together, you're both chefs, I believe you and your co-founder, one of you is a chef, is that right?
Yes.
One of you is a chef, got it. So you came up with this idea for the products and you went to farmers markets, which I know a lot of vegan and plant-based business owners do because it's a great testing ground. So what happened from there? Talk us through that growth from the farmers market to the next stage and how you got there. Yeah,
I'll give you just a little bit on how it got started. So there's this guy named James, classically trained French chef from England originally, actually. He comes over to Vancouver, Canada, starts working at a plant-based restaurant there called Heirloom, watches some documentaries, learns more about it, ends up going vegan. He meets a girl, has a kid, all in a pretty short space. And he then moves to this place called Denman Island. So just off the coast of Vancouver Island, population of about 1,000, gets there very quickly, realizes there's no work for him. There's no restaurants. He's going to have to be a little bit entrepreneurial. At the same time, he's missing the taste of meat and he's just not impressed with what's on grocery store shelves. Everything's very processed, full of ingredients he can't pronounce. And he wants to create something that he can feel good about feeding his young family. So that's kind of where it started. He went into the kitchen for a month or so, came out with 2 products, very British bangers. So like an English breakfast sausage and then kind of a classic veggie burger. Had some extra, took it to the local farmer's market, sold out in about 15 minutes or so. Wow. And then it was like, wow, I'm onto something here. So this was actually summer of 2016. So I guess we've been around kind of for 5 years now. It has flown by. So him and his wife were spending each week in the home kitchen making these products, selling out every weekend. That's when I kind of came into the picture. So it turns out there's a tenuous family connection there. James's wife's brother is married to my sister. So we're, stepbrothers-in-law once removed or something like that. I'd grown up vegetarian. I'd had a lot of not so great veggie burgers. I tried his products and was just blown away. He really kind of nailed it in terms of taste and texture. So this was a handmade seitan. So it's beans, it's veggies, it's herbs and spices, bit of wheat flour to bind it all together. Really tasty. And we just got to talking, decided to kind of team up and see where we could take this. We went down to Victoria, which is kind of the closest big city, 2.5 hours away, for a Christmas market. Once again, had a great response, had a few hundred people show up, sold out again. And while we were there, we noticed they had this full-time retail space available. So it's like this big indoor year-round kind of farmer's market. There's day vendors on the inside, restaurants, stores around the outside. And we said, that spot looks nice. Let's do something there. So a few months later, February of 2017, we opened the first vegan butcher shop on the west coast of Canada. Had about 1,000 people show up on our opening day. Had to shut down for a week after that just to restock everything. And then since then, we've really just been struggling to keep up with demand and to keep growing the brand and our products.
Wow, that's amazing. I love that. What a story. What were some of the challenges in opening up that first facility? Because like you said, going to farmers markets, it's fairly low risk, you know what I mean? You can kind of stop at any time, you haven't got the big rents and staff and all of that. So what were some of the challenges you found in opening the first plant-based butchery, and how did you handle those?
Yeah, it was a lot of work. Luckily I had some savings, so I kind of bankrolled the initial stuff. I mean, we did all the construction ourselves. So my mom and dad were there helping paint the walls and put stuff in. So we did it, for as cheaply as possible with the idea of getting something open and kind of testing the market a bit further. Because farmers markets were great. We know people loved it, but we wanted that kind of an outpost where people knew where to find us. We also wanted to kind of have a restaurant offering there as well. So we, instead of selling a pack of burgers for $10, we'll sell one burger with a bun for $10, was kind of the thinking at the time. Biggest challenge early on was capital, was our time, our resources. How are we going to make this work? Obviously, a food manufacturing business is incredibly hard to start and to scale. Margins are tight. For the first, we basically, other than my savings, we bootstrapped for the first couple of years. So it was very much living paycheck to paycheck as a business. So yeah, it was tough kind of managing and juggling all of those, different things.
Yeah, for sure. And thank you for sharing that. I think that's helpful for people to know, how did you get started? So, so as you mentioned, so you funded it yourselves for the first couple of years. Then in 2018, you launched an equity crowdfunding campaign. You had a goal of reaching, I believe, 100K, and you hit 600K with 240 investors. Why did you go that route of fundraising at that stage?
Yeah. So just to backtrack a little bit, so we opened up in February 2017. Then that summer we launched a Kickstarter campaign. It wasn't equity crowdfunding, but it was basically a giant pre-order for our meat. So we said, give us $100 to help us, expand, get some more equipment, build it up, and then in a couple months we'll give you $100 of meat back. And that went really well. We raised about, I want to say 64 or 70,000 from 800 people around the world. And we used that to expand into a larger location. So still in this same market, but it had a production kitchen in the back. We could expand our hot food offering and really just kind of take it to the next level. So we did that. And then the next thing for us, we were on Dragon's Den. I think they have a similar program in the UK, that kind of business program.
So you were on Dragon's Den in Canada.
Yes, it's the same name, but it's confusing. Yeah,
it's the same name. That's right. Yeah, there is a British one. Yeah, okay.
And then right around the time of the Dragon's Den, we basically realized we have all this demand for our products, but we can't fill it, right? We have more orders than we can supply. We're still rolling sausages by hand. We need to figure out how to do this at scale. So that's what this equity crowdfunding campaign was for. I mean, we'd already done the Kickstarter, so we had this base of customers and fans. We were on Dragon's Den. We had some publicity. So we basically said,
did they turn you down on Dragon? So you didn't get a deal with Dragon's Den?
No. So
I bet they're kicking themselves now.
Yeah. Yeah, we had offers from 5 of the 6 dragons. Had a great result. Did a handshake deal, but it didn't end up materializing, which is apparently quite common with these sorts of deals and TV shows. So we found that out, and then we're like, okay, you know what? We don't need the dragons. We got these awesome customers and fans. Let's see if they want to support us and really take things to the next level again.
Why did they not go with it? Are you able to say, why did they decide? Did you decide? No, we're not. How did that pan out?
So basically, I think maybe they got a bit excited. So they were competing. They ended up putting in a joint offer, and I think at the time they offered us, it was. Whatever it was, it was $600,000 or $1 million, and it valued the company at $7.5 million or something. And they had this big line of credit attached to it, so it was a great deal. But then they came back to us and offered us, a quarter of what they offered on TV. So we were like, you know what? Thanks, but no thanks, you know.
Yeah, take advantage of the publicity and okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So then we raised, you know, money at a similar valuation on Front Funder, raised $600,000 and used that to open a proper production facility. So we moved into an old bakery. You know, once again, I got my parents back in to help paint the walls and put some stuff up. And that's when we kind of moved from like a little kitchen to not a huge space, but, you know, 4,000 square feet. We were able to get our first sausage stuffer in there. So we're no more rolling by hand and really able to start producing more products so that we could start getting into more grocery stores. Because originally we were just selling in our butcher shop, we were selling online, and then we were selling in like 30, you know, a handful of grocery stores based on what we could produce.
I love that. What a story. I love that. And I love that, you know, you can go on these shows and they don't always pan out. And even if you don't get a deal or if either party decides to change it, it doesn't mean it's over. I think sometimes people can put a bit of an all or nothing, like, oh my gosh, you know, so I think that's really great. With the crowdfunding campaign, the equity crowdfunding campaign, why? Because crowdfunding, whether it's equity crowdfunding or, you know, general crowdfunding, they can be hit and miss for some people. Like some businesses, you know, it just doesn't work. And for some like yours, you're sort of hitting it out of the park. Why, or how did you promote the equity crowdfunding campaign? And why do you think that campaign was such a success?
Yeah. I think, I mean, from day one, we'd been building a brand, building a story. We run the Kickstarter campaign, so people were already kind of familiar, very similar mechanics, right? So we built this community. We were building an email list, a website. And so then by the time we were ready for Front Funder, we had all these people we could talk to, you know, on social media, on email, through some new stuff we did. So we just had a lot of different ways of promoting it and getting it out there and kind of sharing our story with a wider audience.
Got it. Wonderful. So let's talk about going public. So last year you became, I think, the second plant-based meat company after Beyond Meat to launch an IPO. And I believe it started out, you know, straight out of the gate, a lot of excitement again, which is fantastic. And this was in the midst of the pandemic, you know, in 2020, you went public. Why did you decide to go public, and especially at this early stage? Because I know it's an interesting way, you know, like for independent businesses or for family businesses, it's that weighing up of that loss of control, I guess. So why did you decide to go public at this stage?
Yeah, so for us, I mean, we'd raised the money on Front Funder, we'd expanded, gotten to a point where we realized we needed to raise more money to further expand, to get more equipment. You know, there's to buy ingredients, like there's so many different costs. And for a good 6 months to a year, I was out on the, I guess, the pitch circuit, you could call it. So I was at startup events, I was pitching to investors, you know, talking to VCs, just, you know, trying to raise some more money. We had some early successes. You know, we brought in a bit more money after the front funder, not a ton. And then I was still doing deliveries at the time. So I was doing deliveries in Vancouver, super nice place. Walk in there for the delivery and the guy starts chatting to me. He's a huge fan, loves what we're doing, has been to a restaurant in Victoria, and he's wondering what our plans are for growth. And his whole thing was he was in the capital markets in Vancouver, and his whole pitch was, you know, him and a few friends will put in some money. So they put in just under $2 million to help us kind of scale up, professionalize the company with the goal of taking it public, you know, within a year or so. And we thought long and hard about it, but for us, it was the best deal on the table at the time. I mean, we looked at term sheets from VCs, and we were giving up, you know, a lot of control there as well. We're basically kind of handing over our company to them. And at the same time, you know, Beyond Meat had just gone public. There was a lot of retail demand and interest in plant-based. There weren't a lot of options out there. And we'd also done this Front Funder campaign. So we had 250 investors essentially on our cap table, which makes it tricky to negotiate, you know, with some of these VC deals. So at the end of the day, we saw it as the best option for us to remain in control of our company. I mean, myself and my co-founder are still the largest shareholders by far. And instead of being beholden to a small group of VCs who can kind of choose when you stay and when you go, we'd rather be beholden to our customers, our fans, our investors, you know, the public, anyone that wants to buy a share. We'd rather, you know, be responsible to them and, you know, have myself and James as those two largest shareholders. We went through the process of, you know, getting everything ready. I will also say in Canada, it is definitely more common for smaller cap companies to go public, especially in Vancouver and Toronto. More common and much less expensive than it is in, say, the States. So you see more companies going that route as opposed, there's less private money. It seems less private money available in Canada and more public money. So yeah, I mean, we decided to go for it, get through the audit, all that kind of stuff. All ready to go public. It's, I want to say February of, I guess, last year, a year before, and then COVID hits. I don't know how long this pandemic's been going on. It seems like a long time. COVID hits, markets melt down. We have to put it on pause for a few months, and we'll obviously deal with COVID challenges at the same time. But then we end up going public. It was just over a year ago, I guess, July of last year, and have a great response. We raised $4 million while we go public. Start at 25 cents a share. It goes up to around $2.50, settles around $1.75. We're able to raise more money at that higher valuation, and then really just kind of step on the gas and really further accelerate and expand.
Wow. So when you said you went through the audit process, so how complicated was it? Like, if someone wants to go public, is there a minimum, like, do you have to have certain requirements in place already, like a minimum turnover, or not have massive loads? Like, is there any, can you just talk us through that process? I think that would be helpful to people to go, well, how do I know if I'm ready to go public? What do you need in place?
Yeah, it was complicated for us because audit went back, I think, 2 years. So it went back to our first year in business. And at that period in time, we were still doing, shoebox accounting. So all the receipts, I just spent months digging through them. But if you're relatively organized, it isn't too, it depends what exchange you're going public on. They all have different requirements. It was manageable though. We brought on a CFO who'd gone through that process before. So he really helped organize and spearhead the whole process. But it was definitely challenging, finding all those receipts. And if you can't find one receipt, then they look for 2 more receipts. So it can very quickly snowball.
Oh, wow.
And then, of course, there's, getting the lawyers to prepare this big 100+ page document. So it's definitely a lot. But
so quite an expensive process as well. If you've got to have lawyers involved, there's a certain expense attached to it, doing it.
Yeah. So going into it, we were told it would cost around, 200,000 Canadian or so. Ended up costing closer to $500,000. So it's a significant expense.
Gotcha.
It ended up absolutely paying off for us as we were, able to access the public markets for capital kind of once we were public.
That's great. And you didn't need the permission of any of your previous investors to do public. Like, you could just basically say, right, we're going public, and they have to kind of like it or lump it, kind of thing. Is that right?
Yeah. Myself and James were the largest shareholders, had more than 51% of the company. That initial group of investors that came in with the $2 million were very supportive of that kind of path. And I think our front funder investors were just kind of happy to see us growing and expanding, and yeah. Nice.
What have been the benefits so far? I know it's only been a short sort of time. What benefits have you seen so far from going public?
Yeah, biggest thing has been access to capital at a valuation that we couldn't have achieved privately. So we're able to raise much more money than we could have previously, which allows us to expand faster. It allows us to hire 8 people, allows us to lease, a new production facility. So a few months ago, we started operating in the old Day of Foods facility in Vancouver. So 45,000 square foot, really full on manufacturing. So I think that's been the biggest thing for us. Obviously, I guess there's some reputational stuff as well. You're seen as, being larger and more professional. But for us, the biggest thing was that access to capital. I don't want to say easily or quickly, but we're not spending a year, raising a round or raising money and doing endless pitches and meetings and, talks and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, gotcha. Any drawbacks or challenges involved in going public?
Yeah. I think it's almost like you have to run a second company. So you've got your original business, and that's got to be running great. It's got to be growing, increasing revenue. And then on top of that, you have to layer on the public side, which is almost like, for me, it's another, full-time job, almost communicating with investors, raising money, putting out, news releases, all that kind of stuff is it's a lot of work, and, you can bring in people to help, and we have, but yeah, it's a lot. And, the stock price goes up and goes down and goes up. And yeah, it's a lot, but it's been really great for us.
Nice. Now, as we mentioned, you have scaled very quickly. So as you mentioned, you've got the larger flagship production facilities in Canada. I believe you've got one in the US, and you're working on an online platform to service UK and European customers. So I'm just curious how you've managed to do that, because I know obviously, you know, the story is great and you're sharing it, but I'd love for you can just kind of dive a bit deeper into how you've managed to do that successfully, given all the moving parts. You've got staff costs, which are no small thing, rents and you know, equipment, all of that, while balancing the finances and not, I guess, I'm putting growing too quickly in you know, in air quotes, because almost like, because that can be a danger for some companies in that they grow too quickly and then they can't fulfill, and then it can all kind of, you know, crash in on itself. So how have you managed to kind of do all of that, like grow so quickly whilst balancing, you know, the finances and everything else involved?
The short answer is hiring great people. So my role has transitioned a bit into more of a storyteller, and then we built a really solid kind of leadership team. So the nice thing about Vancouver, there's a lot of big plant-based food companies have come from there, you know, Gardein, Vega, Dea Foods. So there's a lot of awesome people there who have gone through similar things before. And know how to scale and run a large plant-based food company. So we've really brought in a great team. You know, each people have their different departments. They're building out their teams and helping out in all areas. And together we're not doing it perfectly, but we're managing our growth and we're, you know, making sure that because we see all this demand for the product, so we're making sure that we have the production capacity. And then once that we have that capacity, we're getting that out there, and it's definitely a juggling or a balancing act. But so far we've been doing all right.
Yeah, that's good that you've mentioned that bringing in the right people at the right time to manage all of that, because trying to do it yourself and having founder syndrome where you want to control everything and try and manage everything, and it can be quite impossible sometimes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I appreciate you sharing that. So you mentioned, so you products are sold in your own stores, obviously, and including your online shop, as well as other retailers. Where do most of your sales come from at the moment, Mitchell? Or would you say, is it predominantly other retailers or online? What's that kind of balance, just approximately?
Yeah, so it's 70 to 80% online, or it has been historically. Especially through COVID, more and more people are buying online. Also, while we were scaling up, it's easier to adjust your online sales through different promotions and ad campaigns. Whereas if you make a huge commitment to a retailer and you can't fulfill it, that's a missed opportunity there. I mean, I think long term it's going to shift the other way. It's going to be 80% retailers, 15% online, and then the rest in our butcher shops. Yeah.
Right, got it. What tips and advice can you offer vegan or plant-based business owners who want to scale? So anything you've learned along the way, because obviously this is, I guess, a new thing for both of you and James. So what advice can you offer on anyone that's kind of in a situation going, yeah, I want to do that, whatever it is, whether it's, not necessarily the same type of products that you do, but anyone who thinks, yeah, I want to do that, I want to grow, I want to scale, what advice and tips can you offer them?
Yeah, I think the first thing is make sure you have kind of that product market fit, like make sure you have a product that people actually want. And, I think we're almost lucky in that we bootstrapped the first few years, because it forced us to really figure out what our customers want and make it for them. Obviously you want traction, you want to be growing a brand. And then I think the next thing is just be really careful with who you're hiring, like put in a solid team, because you can't do it all yourself. So, find people that, align with your values and that have done this work before and can help you. And that doesn't even factor in what you'll need to scale, which is, likely significant capital.
Yeah, absolutely. Any particular times, because I know sometimes, when we get the sort of, not the unicorn story, there's another term for it, but what I mean, we get the Phoenix story, is it, or the origin story, and it's always, it's a positive thing. Can you talk us through any particular times where it wasn't all just sunshine and rainbows and you were at a point of kind of like, I'm not sure if we can do this, it's all too much, like any particular times where things were just not going well? Can you give us a couple of examples of those? Because I just want to make sure people are realistic, because I know people might think, oh, this sounds great, I'm going to do that, and it's all happy all the time. So can you just talk us through a couple of
so I mean, I didn't myself, my co-founder didn't pay ourselves a salary for the first 2 years at least. I pawned my wife's wedding ring twice while we were growing the company.
Are you still married?
we're still married. I got the ring back both times, but
good.
you can imagine, and that that was to make payroll. You can imagine, things were tight and were tough as we were growing and scaling. And I mean, everything was kind of positive in that people liked what we were doing. We had more orders than we could fill, but trying to get all the pieces to work properly so that you can be continuing to grow and make money and finance that growth is super challenging. And there's been so many companies that have a great product or offering, but they haven't been able to kind of keep growing. So those are just a few small examples. I was working 7 days a week for the longest time. I get weekends off now usually, which is great. But yeah, it's tough, and you have to really believe in what you're doing to kind of tough through it. And I think especially, we were running the butcher shop, we were still doing farmers markets on the weekends. It was full on. And at that point, we didn't really have money to hire people or good people who knew what they were doing. So we were small, we were tight, and we were doing everything ourselves. So I was, doing all our accounting and then sending it to professionals once a quarter to kind of review.
That's what I did when we first started our business. When we moved from the UK to Australia, and I did that, and it was a nightmare. I had to pay someone, like you say, professional, to kind of undo whatever mess I'd done. And the best things I did was to hand it over to a bookkeeper. I was like, oh my God, yes. Brilliant.
So and I guess it seems like, it's been faster overnight or whatever, but it has, it's been 4 or 5, pretty hard years. And, over the past, 2 years or so, it hasn't been easier, but it's been, it's been really great and exciting to finally do all these things that we've been dreaming of for years. And really, I remember we were joking, when we first started the company, like our end goal was to get into Whole Foods Market was like the pinnacle, right? And then we did that 2 years ago or whatever it was. Like, wow, here we're in Whole Foods. Okay, what's next? Where else are we? So.
I love it. Thank you for sharing that. I think it's just helpful for people to know. And I mean, it can be, even something like a tech thing going wrong, and then suddenly, that's more time, and it can impact on other things. And it can be stressful. It's not all just that easy road, but obviously, when the gains come, it's amazing. So in terms of marketing and sales, I know you said from the beginning you've been building a brand, and I think that's another important message that you've shared. You haven't just created these products and put them out there and how many sales can you get. You've actually created a brand. You've told the story. What have been some of the marketing strategies that you've used and that you continue to use that have been most successful?
Yeah, good question. I mean, for the first few years there was no marketing budget or marketing person, so it was me, and it was all organic social media. It was making a website, having an email list. I think that's really crucial to have that direct connection to your consumers early on, because if you're on a grocery store shelf, you're at the whims of the retailer. They can decide they don't like you and move you or delist you. If you have fans and a way to communicate with them, you can say, hey, go buy the product here or buy it from us. Like, you have a lot more options. In terms of kind of tactical things, I think we tried early on. It was just kind of a be everywhere mentality or approach. So it was a lot of events. It was a lot of, we were doing 2 or 3, we had the butcher shop open. We were doing 2 or 3 different farmers market or pop-ups or collaborations with other brands. As we've evolved, we've started working with some influencers. So sending out a bunch of product, getting them to be your brand ambassadors has been good. Trying to think if there's anything else that springs to mind. I think also just kind of having a bit of fun with it. We've got our mascot is a dead bean named Birdie. And we put him on t-shirts. We kind of have a little fun with it. And just, I think, coming across as, authentic, down to earth, really resonates with people. And your fans will be your biggest kind of cheerleaders or supporters, and they'll tell their friends, and it'll all kind of go from there.
Nice. I love that. Now, obviously, as we mentioned, this plant-based meat space is growing massively globally, which is obviously awesome. And you've got, some big competitors. You've got your Beyond Meat, your Impossible Foods in the plant, and others in the plant-based space. But now we've also got the big corporations, like Nestle and others, like coming in and bringing out their own plant-based meat products. So how do you plan to continue to stand out and apart?
Yeah, a few things. So I almost see Beyond and Impossible as an extension of our marketing department. They're putting Super Bowl ads out there. They're getting more and more people to try a plant-based burger. And then for a lot of people, they have this kind of negative perception of plant-based meats. I mean, I had, as I mentioned, some not so great veggie burgers over the years. I'm sure most people have. So once someone tries one of their products, they're like, wow, plant-based meat tastes good. And then they're going to be much more open to it. They're going to see what else is out there. They're not going to eat the same burger day in, day out. So it's really kind of opening the door for new customers. I think for us, we're trying to, and then, sorry, just for the Nestle point, I think, a lot of people don't want to purchase from the Nestles of the world. And what we're trying to do is show that we have a better product and a mission behind it. And we're really positioning ourselves as that kind of premium plant-based meat. This is with the Very Good Butchers. So we, great ingredients, great taste, great texture, still affordable, but definitely a bit premium, like what you'd find going into a butcher shop or in the kind of high-end meat section, I guess, of your grocery store. And I think it's hard for the big companies, even for Beyond and Impossible, to say they have the highest quality, finest products, in the world if they are at Burger King and at all these other big fast food chains. So it's great that they're getting them out there and making it more accessible. But I think as people eat more plant-based meat, they're going to start taking a closer look at what's in it, and they're going to start shopping around and looking at other options.
Right. So your focus is a bit more healthier products or less processed. Is that right?
Yeah. So healthier and just putting real food into our products. So, all our products contain, beans, vegetables, most of them 3 or 4 different actual vegetables. So we're not just taking, dried veggies and powder, we're taking real vegetables, grinding them up and yeah, so putting this into it. And as a result of that, they're healthier, they've got better nutritionals. And that's really a key part of what we do is how do we create the tastiest plant-based products? Like the taste and texture has to be there or you're not going to get anyone. Yeah. But how do we actually make it healthy and good for you as well?
Yeah, wonderful. I think that's going to be a growing market, as you said. I know I certainly see on social media, which is kind of frustrating in a way, because because I've been like same with you. I've been vegan for 25 years, and I've seen this thing. It's like, oh, these plant-based meats. Oh, but they're full of X, Y, and Z. They're really highly processed, and it's like, well, hello, let's look at what's in the meat, whatever. But it's quite interesting. But at the same time, I guess it's good to have those options, like you said, for people who want to go to the fast food places and they've got the option of something, but also, with what you're doing, I think that's going to be quite a growing market, that kind of slightly cleaner, healthier, but still tasty. Because look, like you, I've had the lentil burgers, you know what I mean? The lentil pates that are like dry and bland, and they might be healthy, but not very tasty. So I think this is an area that's, like super tasty and delicious and clean as well. So just finally, to wrap up, Mitchell, what are your future plans? I know sometimes it can be a bit hard to plan with COVID. Nobody really knows what's going on. But what are your visions for yourself and for the company?
Yeah. So I mean, for myself, I still want to. I'm here for. I'm here for the foreseeable future. I'm really loving what I'm doing. Actually having a daughter in a month and a half or so that'll be a big change for me.
Congratulations.
Yeah, you heard it first on Vegan Business Media.
There we go, we've broken the story. Wonderful. How exciting.
And for the business, I mean, there's so much going on. So we went public a year ago, and we went public as the Very Good Food Company, and that's because we love what we're doing at the Very Good Butchers. That's still a super core part of our business, but we saw all these opportunities in other categories. So 6 months ago or so, we acquired a plant-based cheese company called The Cultured Nut. We've rebranded that as the Very Good Cheese Company. So we're getting into cheese. We're looking at other categories as well, dairy alternatives, ready-to-eat meals. And basically, we're trying to get millions of people to rethink what they're eating and their food choices. We want to go into people's pantries and fridges and take every animal-based product in there and replace it with a tastier, healthier, cleaner, plant-based version. And we're trying to build a global brand. So, the focus this year is on North America, where we just launched in US retail, a few weeks ago. We're already starting to look at Europe. So we launched in e-commerce in the UK, actually also a few weeks ago. So next year, expanding into Europe, looking at APAC. And we really, we want to be a global brand. We want to have these butcher shops, 15 or 20 of these butcher shops around the world, just showing what we're all about, showing that plant-based eating is approachable and delicious. You don't have to sacrifice anything to have a juicy burger or steak. We want to sell online, and we want to also be in grocery stores.
Wow. So not much then. I'm kidding.
Not much. So that's what we're driving towards. And it'll take some more time to get there, but I think based on how fast we've been moving so far, I think I'm just very excited to see where we go.
Wonderful. I love it. Really exciting. Such great things happening in the space. Thank you so much for sharing your journey, and also some of the more detailed pieces of how you went about that and why you made the decisions that you did. And obviously a very exciting time for the very good butchers, the very good cheese company, the very good food company. So really, really wonderful. Really appreciate your time, Mitchell. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks so much for having me on the show.
Thanks everyone for tuning in. Bye for now.